And we're live. Hello, everybody. This is Michael Finocchiaro on the AI Across the Product Lifecycle podcast. The second one of today. We had earlier Conic and Raven talking about BIM and CAD, which is good. Now we're kind of switching to the dark side of marketing, pre-sales, supply chain. It'll be a lot of fun. Fay, why don't you introduce yourself and Bardin?
All right. My name is Fay. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bardin AI. And essentially, we are building an application engineer that sits in the pocket of every industrial automation, sales, and support team member. So essentially, all those really complicated engineering and application-minded questions that folks that are buyers of industrial automation systems have no longer need to only be escalated to your top engineers, but your sales folks and your support team could actually take and answer and support those questions and those queries that they've got, help them along the sales process and the post-sales process as well.
Oops, sorry. the
No
tab,
problem.
I hope it wasn't muted, so I need to fix that. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, my name's Scott Lionello. I'm a co-founder and CPO at Omnae Technologies. We provide many-to-many supply chain collaboration solutions that notably actually provide a surface that works for the small businesses you're trying to collaborate with and allows you to get agents playing in your supply chain in a way that's safe and deterministic enough to be workable today.
Awesome. I am really glad to have both of you guys here today, and an international group too. I've got Vancouver and Tel Aviv, so pretty far apart.
Yeah, this must be the biggest time zone spread you've hosted in a while.
Most likely. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, has ever done with? Oh, I haven't done with an Indian company yet. Probably in India and California would be pretty close.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Because you're
Japan and Australia, and you've got,
yeah.
got the there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do have some startups there, but anyway, we're about 4 years into the whole OpenAI revolution, right? This before and after. I'm wondering, as founders, were you guys skeptical or you super bullish as soon as it came out? What was your reaction to the OpenAI moment?
I remember it clearly, November 2022. In fact, I left my job in venture capital with the belief that I would be able to finally take the dream of wanting to be an engineer and build things without having to have gone and actually studied it. I remember my first engagement at that point with ChatGPT. And it's interesting because it's like, I think a lot of us as consumers start the moment from November 2022, but anyone that has been in the machine learning side knows that this goes so far back that, AI is just a euphemism in a sense for really just, machine learning. But I think the moment really that everyone's talking about is that November moment. And I was incredibly bullish on how to think about it, how to approach it, how to learn as much as possible about it, how to use it on a daily basis, and still am nauseatingly bullish about it.
Thank you. Scott, were you as
I think
nauseatingly bullish?
in our very specific world of things that touch the general ledger, there was a lot of skepticism, and there kind of still is in the world, where if it has to be penny perfect every time and there is zero fault tolerance, you have to do a lot of work before you can let it loose. Right? So it's coming together, but it's been a slow burn for us, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because there are those two perspectives. How do you look at it from a consumer perspective when you're just an average person using it versus when you're building with it? And the importance, you had mentioned this, Scott, of something that you had said was building out the deterministic capabilities. And I think especially in industrial, it's like you can't just have that ChatGPT moment go across the companies that we're building for. It just doesn't work. We even see, Copilot's great in certain ways, but it's not what you're going to be building your systems on. It's not something you're going to be relying on in order to make, whether it's, financial supply chain decision or whether it's engineering decisions. It's that the moment needs to go beyond a moment, and it needs to go very deeply into confidence and trust and, like you said, determinism and not just prediction.
Yeah, and I imagine we're both working on workloads that are bearing on contracts and non-trivial liability, right? So if you're making representations about the capability of an industrial system, or in our case, like accepting orders or asking to make an order, etc. Like, you can't make a mistake.
Yeah, you can't make a mistake with scoping projects, selling projects, supporting it, saying what goes wrong. And even what's interesting to see is like this future of, where AI is going to go in terms of even regulatory issues related to it towards AI, like to AI when it comes to industrial space, and auditability of the answers that AI is giving, which is like something we're deeply thinking about now. Is when you're building out the AI in order to give an answer, how do you trace back that response in order to audit it eventually, in order to say, this is why it gave this suggestion of this configuration in our case, or this is why it gave this suggestion to the customer to fix it in this specific way. And when you come into this level of regulations in AI and industry, you need to make sure you can find an audit path, and you can go back and say, and in our case, we're building a knowledge graph for that. One of the many reasons is so that you can go back and say, AI, the LLM or AI went to this decision not just because it decided that it was the right, interesting, and it matched all the specs, but this actually has worked, and this is why it made that decision, to actually kind of think about it and traverse back across those decisions. So I think that's where a lot of people need to think about AI in a different way when they're building in any regulated industries like ours.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a great observation. And it reminds me, like last year, I was at the Capgemini's Engineering Horizons conference, and there was this great talk by a professor from Oxford that was working on robotics. And her thing was like, we have black boxes, right? So an airplane, no matter what country it's made in, who's flying it, if it crashes, we can figure it out because we found the black box, and we can, no matter what, we can figure it out. Where's the black box for robots? And where's the black box for AI influencing engineering decisions, right? We don't have any standard for that. It's all just up to. So anyway, I thought it was a super interesting thing. And she was arguing for like an black box standard for robots, because someday a hospitality robot is going to kill someone, and no, we're not going to figure out, is it parameter number 11,752, or was it some idiot human that just clicked yes and didn't read what the actual was happening? I mean, we're going to need that, right? So yeah, it's a very valid point.
I've seen a new wave of startups actually building insurance for AI, which was an interesting thing.
That's
Yeah,
an
I don't know
I-
much about it, but it's just something I saw recently, which is like,
Yeah,
interesting.
I hope they're very confident in their actuarial math as they they head down that path.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about software development, because that's one of the. In fact, it was interesting earlier today. I always ask this question later about the OpenAI moment for engineering or for supply chain, and it's true. Someone mentioned we had the OpenAI moment for programming, right? That was this January. Cloud Code. Well, it was anti-gravity superseded like immediately by Cloud Code, which is just. So how has that changed? You guys are both founders, and you have programmers working for you. How has that changed fundamentally how you look at managing a company, managing programmers, managing meetings of programmers? I mean, has the whole waterfall versus agile gone out the window because now it's all agents setting up their own Scrum meetings? I mean, just talk to me about that a little bit.
Scott, you want to go
Either
first?
of you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I'm happy to do it.
for us, it's been wonderfully helpful in allowing us to, change our team structure from kind of one big Scrum team of like 8 people, because we're relatively cash constrained, into breaking it so that it's, one PM type, a me, a somebody else, and two engineers that are relatively full stack working with Cursor and Claude, I think Opus 4.7. And then kind of one floating designer that's managing the design system and can come in and just do front end cleanup across the whole system without needing to bug anybody, so that the engineers can focus on the hard stuff, which has made it way faster to deliver. And it's also changed from a product management perspective the amount of saying no I have to do, which has been nice, because that was most of the job for the last couple of years. But now I can be more flexible. I can let the system handle edge cases for more people, which is, bringing my TAM into a wider space, which is very nice.
Very cool.
I think for us it's interesting because I'm wearing 2 hats. One is, the CEO, and I'm not the CTO. I've got an incredible co-founder that is managing our dev team. So I'll speak both on behalf of me, Fay, and what I'm now able to do as a non-engineer CEO, but also product centric. and what my co-founder has been able to do. So first of all, like you had said, we are able to do a lot more with our young team, and we're also able to now trust juniors in a way that was interesting, at least for front end. That moment that you were saying with Cloud Code and really the ability to actually have the engineering moment with code, we definitely have felt it. For the first time, our very, very classical back-end engineer actually was willing to try AI tools. Initially, he was like, hell no, am I letting this near my code base? And, about a year and a half ago. And now there's actually a little bit more of a flexibility of saying that the capabilities, at least for backend as well. We always were very bullish on front end, using these tools to be able to build out really the product interface. And we're also able to do a lot more with a lot less, like you had said, Scott, is like we are actually able to do a lot more pumping out of even prototypes very quickly. And that kind of leads me to where I'm loving it as a non-engineer, not building out, our products directly, but my ability to actually take these dreams that I have after customer conversations or after seeing new things on the market, being able to very rapidly create a prototype that I can then speak to my dev team that it's not just a written spec that I'm doing, but actually show them my vision, which I think has changed a lot of the ways that there's collaboration between product teams, dev teams, customer-facing teams, and seeing a lot of opportunities. And I think that's really where I'm finding a lot of love. Sometimes my co-founder is just like overwhelmed with like, Fay has another prototype she wants to show us, another idea she wants to show, another thing she wants to do. So it's always trying to also figure out how I can hone in, and kind of not let that overtake everything. But overall, it's given us the ability to do so much more. And then even on my CEO side, there were so many things that we were doing and trying to figure out which CRM we wanted to use. We were going to continue using Notion. We were having all our Firefly transcripts. And then we were going in and trying to figure out how we were going to follow up the leads. And my co-founder, he just built us. We call it Bardin Flow, which is our internal system that is able to both take our Scrum board and all of the product roadmap, be able to map it against the bug reports or the feature requests of our customer conversations, be able to loop that back into my re-engagement with them afterwards. And we now have an internal system that runs all of those things for us, with us, and collaborating on finally merging those worlds together, which has in the past been so isolated. I think that merging of worlds is really where the value comes.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
it's
really cool.
admirable working on the internal tools. We haven't done much of that ourselves, kind of just used it to wire what exists together a little better and to run some automations, but we haven't tried building any like scratch CRM for ourselves just yet.
Oh yeah.
I've
I'm
heard
sure
of
we'll get
that.
into it, but
I think that's part of the whole SaaS apocalypse thing, right? The fact that it's so easy to do. It makes me wonder too. I remember, I haven't done a lot of programming, but I've been around a lot of departments doing programming. And I remember there was quite a lot of criticism of Agile because it became just a tool for managers to beat the shit out of the heads of the programmers. And I'm thinking this AI stuff is probably because then there was this craftsmanship movement, right? Which was trying to get back to the original ideas of enablement, as Agile as enablement for programmers. I wonder if AI has really brought that back. Is it become more of a fun thing and it's less of manage a tool? Is it an easier life for the programmer because it doesn't necessarily have a billion Scrum meetings, and is it whole day? Is it just cadenced by all this crap he has to give back to management to prove he's actually doing his or her job, right? Have you seen anything changing there?
I don't know if I can speak to change in the industry. I can speak to change in my world, which is we were pretty strict Agile practitioners for a good long time. Now it's, well, partially because of the change of pace and what's possible. The story points were made up nonsense before this change, and they've just become even more unknowable, whatever the heck vibe estimation of a person day you want it to be. So they're kind of pointless. So for us, it's we take chunks of the roadmap, we decide how we're going to handle them incrementally, and we meet twice a week for a half hour to see if there's any walls we need to run through, and we develop. And that's been working very nice. Now our teams are very small, so it might only work on a small scale. I don't know, but it's been refreshing and a lot less bureaucratic.
Thanks.
And from our side, I think we've kind of discovered, or are still trying sometimes to discover, that sweet spot between being able to just go out and build versus also knowing that we need to sometimes still spec things out, especially ones that have a lot of complex back-end work, or a lot of APIs that need to be built, or a lot of things that need to be done that demand more than one player. And so there's always finding that line of like, let them go build, but also let's make sure that they're building something that is on both sides compatible with each other.
Right.
And so I think that's where we go back to kind of the basics of making sure. I don't believe that now a bunch of agents are going to be able to only build companies. I still believe, like, Scott, you had said in the beginning, is like, you kind of are a manager, the product lead still needs to manage a lot of these decisions and still go ahead and be involved in those daily decisions. So I would say there's a lot of freedom now, but we can't let that freedom overtake smart sensibility in building the right thing for the right customer in the right process.
Yeah, I think it's especially important given AI's, or especially agents, kind of lack of skepticism, the tendency to tell you your ideas are really good. Like you need to challenge yourself and have someone challenging you, or you're just going to run off down a tangent, burn a ton of tokens, and not get anywhere.
Yep.
That reminds me of I've been saying for a while, I think we need some Maimonides agents. And I was just in Granada, so I actually saw the statue of Maimonides that's it there. Like an agent that basically just expresses doubt. Like, I'm not really sure. Are you really sure? Because we need agents like that, not just the one that your idea is the best idea I've ever heard in my entire life kind of thing. My life has only been the last 2 seconds since you started a prompt session. So in terms of the stack that you guys are building respectively, where does AI sit? Is it part of the user experience? Is it a fundamental model? Is it the entire DNA of the stack? Where does it actually sit inside of Bardin and sort of Omnae as a technology?
Within Bardin, it sits in almost the entire product. We are an AI first product. The way that we're building our database is a knowledge graph based on, very, very complex embeddings. We're running AI from the start to the finish. That being said, not all of it is generative AI. So there's a lot of things that are going into it that are classic machine learning elements of AI, breaking things down a little bit more on that side, and not necessarily always is it, again, an LLM coming in and giving an answer. And I think that's something that's important to think about when you're thinking about AI, is that, like, people think of it just as a chatbot and giving answers and making, an LLM going in, but there's a lot of things related to AI that are involved in products that are not necessarily generative. So that's number one. We definitely are an AI first product. We are building with that in mind and with that focus. But then again, we're building to still solve a very non-AI use case, right? We're talking about classic engineering, support tickets and queries and pre-sales scoping of large industrial automation projects. We're using AI as an enabler to help solve human problems that are currently now bogging down the processes that humans need to take. So our goal is not to necessarily replace those folks with AI agents, but to be able to enable them to do their human job a lot better. But AI is definitely core to how we're building, how we're thinking about it, how we're approaching it, and how we're seeing opportunity.
Thanks, Fay. How about
Nice,
it?
yeah.
I know, Scott, you said you're not going to have that same approach, and yet there's still
Ours is a
AI
little
in there.
different. Like I look at our core system as the jungle gym that companies' AIs can play on in their supply chain. And then we have some native deployments of like ML algorithms in the way, once you've got a knowledge graph of how your supply chain is configured behind a BOM, like the actual line items that get you this thing, which is never a clean map to the bill of materials on a product. Like that, the thing that goes out and tries to solve those dependencies for you when you cut an order or you have demand is not an LLM based system, but it is algorithmic. We've got some ML workloads, especially in data onboarding and normalization, because everybody's data is a different kind of mess, and we can't have them going in there and like dragging around and coding in how all these columns match up. We just try and figure that out for them. And then the current native LLM use case is our kind of monitor the email for supply chain signal gateway, which can go in your email and find all the supply chain signal and get it into platform and draft for change orders, sales orders, invoices, your vendor saying they're going to be late, your vendor asking if they're allowed to be early, that kind of thing. Because not everybody's going to play ball right away, right? Like I would love everybody to just hook in their systems and let everything run lights out, but it's going to take time. So that's a stopgap measure for us.
Yeah.
Very,
The
very
human in
cool.
the loop in this world is something that is really important to keep in mind, and building things that are task-based workflows that are classic that humans are doing, that they know that they can, again, not to come up with this audit conversation, but that they can actually measure and say, this is how I would do it. This is the steps. This is where it can go wrong, and be able to come in different places within that. So, again, with Bardin, the first step for us is ingesting that data, like you said, normalizing it, structuring it into the knowledge graph. So it really truly understands, how are these products working? What are their really the specs about them? What are the manuals speaking about? How do we engage with those things? But then so much far beyond that is then understanding, what are the humans doing and what have they done in the past? How have they solved how have the humans solved tickets in the past? How have the humans built industrial projects and spec'd those out and built those bombs in the past, in order to then have those be really the confidence level, barometer of saying, this is what the AI should be thinking about as well. So I think that's a really important thing, is to not just go ahead and say AI knows everything, but to say humans have done it before. Let's really make sure that we're learning from that.
Yeah, and there's a layer on top of technical doability and safety, which we've kind of run into the hard way of, will the humans accept it, especially the accounting persona. I don't know if you've built for accountants before, but they're very control oriented. And if I come in and say, I'm just going to automate every interaction between your GL and the outside world and turn it on, they freak out and hit the stop button. So we had to go back and turn all the automation off and let them turn them on one at a time as they start to trust it, which was a lot more work than just automating everything in the first place. But these are the things we learn.
I think those are the things that a lot of companies that have, like, the first thing they did with AI was build an AI chatbot onto their website that expected it to somehow magically answer all of their customer questions. And they realized it was just going ahead and hallucinating all those answers. And they're like, oh, wait, maybe this is not the way to go. Maybe this is not the smartest thing that we need to do. And I think that's kind of right now, we're probably going to see, and we're seeing it already, is there was like a distrust of AI because no one knew anything about it. Then there was a real big excitement of, let's get it into everything. And then there was also then slowly a hesitancy because they know the mistakes it could make. And now I feel like we're in this space again of, okay, we know we need this. We know we want to engage. We know it makes our lives better, but prove to me it works. And I think we're seeing that cycle, which I think is an interesting thing. Don't like it, love it, interesting. Now let's actually build it properly.
Yes, and make sure my dealership chatbot doesn't agree to sell a guy a truck for $1. As happened a time or two.
It makes me also want to ask you guys about the changing economic models, though, right? Because this stuff isn't cheap. I mean, whether you're using Cloud Code for development or you're using an LLM that your customer's using, how have you guys changed the economics, or have you thought of creating your own LLM that understands supply chain or AE, or are you allowing customers to bring their own Anthropic API key? I mean, how are you dealing with that? Because otherwise the operating costs are going to be just astronomical, right? If you're paying the bill for Amazon and AWS and Anthropic and ChatGPT, I mean, what's left, right, to pay salaries? I'm just wondering, how do you guys deal with that? Because that's sort of a new economics that's coming out in the last year, and I'm not sure we have a consistent answer yet.
I don't think I know I don't have a consistent answer yet. I'm still discovering it, still working at it, still trying to understand. Everyone's talking about outcome-based or usage-based pricing for customers, but in the end of the day, industrials still understand user-based pricing. They still want something that they can actually plan on their, understand what their spend looks like. So it's an interesting thing. I think as an early stage startup, we're still navigating and we're still exploring, we're still seeing things. We're still seeing what other folks are doing in the space. So to be honest, I don't have, I don't know yet. And we're still learning. But
for now, the people are using your API keys, or they can bring their own API key?
For now, we are taking care of it. We're still in that stage of doing it on our own in the beginning.
Gotcha.
We are connecting their data is connected into our system. We're actually able to maintain hosting in their cloud, but sometimes we're moving it into a managed cloud. For now, we are swallowing those costs.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll see what the future holds.
For us, it's a bit of both. So for the data onboarding ML stuff, the dependency solving, we eat that. For the email gateway, that's pay as you go on our LLM. And then if they want to scope in their own API key and let it do things, we're working on that to basically give them the ability to generate the API on top of our API. That means that it's scoped very pedantically down to what they want it to do using plain language, and that it is rate limited, so it's not going to light a gajillion tokens on fire if they let it play with Omnae. And then on the development side of the fence, in terms of managing costs, we haven't done too bad just based on the way we're working, which is very incremental, trying not to get Claude to go run off for a day and burn 1 million tokens and then throw that code in the trash. So trying to know we're going to actually want to use something before we go get it built beyond the looks like it works pretty prototype stage has kept our internal burn pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm going to add something to that in general. Like when we're building out Bardin, the way we're building it is we understand that there is a future that folks are going to want to be building out their own agents and using infrastructure. We're building it out eventually to be the decision infrastructure for industrial automation decisions when it comes to selling and scoping those products is really how we're thinking about it in a long-term opportunity. And we know in order for that to happen, we need to build the infrastructure now for them to build their own agents on top of that, connect their own models, connect their own things. And so we definitely are building with that in mind. Currently, right now, we're not there. But that is something that we're planning for and thinking about. When it comes to, our internal team using it, it's so funny to see, and you can tell that we're an early stage startup because you hear all these huge, massive companies that brag about the millions and millions of tokens. And they're like, you're not a real developer unless you're burning through X budget of tokens. And I'm just like, wow,
the leaderboards are hilarious.
Yeah, leaderboards, exactly. And it's like, I want a leaderboard of building out something right.
Well, it's also interesting that we're coming into a space where a rate limit on an API is a feature and not an annoyance. Where say giving your client the ability to let your scope of their API not light a 10 grand on fire in an afternoon, as a safety guardrail. Is a you're welcome, not a you're annoyed because you're trying to get something to work with the integration.
That's crazy. Yeah. I never even thought of that. So we've been 4 years into this AI thing, right? So 2022 to now. And we've seen just an absolutely mind-boggling amount of change, right? And yet I'm not sure. I mean, we've seen an OpenAI moment I saw an OpenAI moment in manufacturing when I saw to prove it that they could deploy an entire factory of sensors in 3 minutes. That was just a totally OpenAI kind of moment, right?
That's Jeff's system, right?
Jeff and Litmus and
cool stuff.
Inductive also. And then we definitely saw an OpenAI moment with programming light in January of this year. We haven't really seen it for engineering, have we? Or even for supply chain. I mean, do you think there'll actually be a moment, or it'll be a series of moments, or that these things just move too slow and the data is so complicated that we may never see? I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think we're going to have an OpenAI moment for what we do?
I think it's going to take time. In the space of big enterprise supply chain software, these are deployments that traditionally take years. In a good case, trying to deploy SAP supply chain is a 24-month at minimum frame off rebuild of your business. And in that world, you can deploy quick wins at the edges, but you really can't do it at the core. But I think once some of those deployments actually get done, you'll see some companies just lapping other people in ways that you've never seen before.
I think when you're looking at it, I would segment it. Saying an AI moment in supply chain is touching a lot of players in it. You're talking about procurement, you're talking about the sellers, you're talking about the folks in the middle, you're talking about the distributors, you're talking about the suppliers. It's hard to say that one would be a cohesive moment because there's always an easier entrant into saying we are going to now make a large shift into the way these people work. And I think we're going to see it segmented. So we're going to see AI moments in our case, let's say the sales and support teams that are really focusing on the engineering questions and being able to optimize those folks. And we're going to see a lot more openness. And then we're going to also see things separately on the procurement side. And we're going to see separately things when it comes to invoicing or et cetera. I also think that those moments are going to be segmented by mindsets instead of first, we're going to have the moment of, I recognize AI will change my business fundamentally. That's a moment. Then I recognize that I can implement this into my business. That's a moment. Then we'll say, I now recognize that this is actually implemented and is actually making a change. And then we'll have the moment of, I cannot do my business without this. And I think each of those are going to be moments. And I think if we're looking at it waiting for a collective moment, then we're not looking at it correctly, because I think we are all looking at this ChatGPT moment in November 2022 as like a moment, but you speak to anyone building in the space, they're like, that has been worked on in small moments for years. And if you listen to the podcasts about, the folks that are Google DeepMind and how they were thinking about it and how they were approaching it, we're talking about a lot of very, very big moments separately that, don't even think about as the moment. So I think we
I
need to
agree,
be that way.
but my point is though is that we didn't think about AI the same way after November. Right? I mean, there was the way we worked before, and then there was the OpenAI moment, and it's the way afterwards. I mean, nothing is the same, right? I mean, the way you think about user interface is not the same. You expect to be able to talk to your app. You don't want to click anymore, right? So
Yeah,
that's
I
sort
think
of where I was going with that.
my supposition, though I don't have any proof, is that especially in the procurement world, there's a lot of dark stack AI going on where line purchasers, buyers, reps are just using it, and there's a fair amount of risk there. And postmortems on why things got agreed to that were impossible, and that's why lawsuits are happening, will start to point people towards trying to deploy it properly, or in more risk averse companies try to step on it for a little while. But like this, the way the whole supply chain is oriented around the buyer persona within businesses is basically they are the the real integration point between businesses, buyers and reps, where they kick out emails saying, hey, where's my stuff? They get a response. They pack that into a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet gets fed into SAP once a day. And that's how the thing works. And that call and response and the knowledge graph of who makes what and how it feeds into the dependencies of actually getting something built needs to come out of those people's heads somehow. And like, shameless plug, that's what we're trying to do. And get into some kind of many-to-many system that can actually make things work in between companies that aren't just an entire profession, which we don't want to fire those people. We want to make them a lot more effective, but they're also going to try and do it on their own dark stack and do a little bit more chilling before it's going to end up in some kind of proper system. So it's going to take some time.
So
I think
speaking
there's a
of,
lot.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think there's a lot that we can learn building in industrials and building a manufacturing and supply chain from the way that these moments have happened in legal spaces, that these moments have happened when it comes to, hospitals and medical spaces, and the way that vertical AI has actually worked in other spaces, and the pathway to make it work and have those moments. I think I spend a lot of time looking at the way some companies have been doing it, in the medical space, AI Doc or ADoc, in the legal tech space, Legora or Harvey, or, when you're looking at the way that they've been building things, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And I think you're seeing regulated industries adopt AI, and whether it's, governmental, and I'm going to, another Israeli startup, Darwin, right? They're building into government, et cetera. There's a lot of ways to think about building well unsuccessfully in our areas. And it all boils down to trust. And I think that's the most important.
The demographics of the people that watch this podcast, there's actually quite a lot of younger entry level people, and I'm wondering. Well, I'm imagining that they probably have a lot of anxiety because all the dire predictions of AI destroying all the entry level jobs. As founders and as people hiring younger people, what kinds of things are you looking for in those profiles that you're like, no, definitely this person is better than an AI? Like, what should they be focusing on so they are employable in this AI era?
I don't want someone that's better than an AI. I want someone that knows how to use AI very confidently. I want someone that will come to me in the interview and show me what they've vibe coded. I want someone that has shown me, if they're looking for a marketing or sales role, the way that they've built or managed agents in order to do the dirty work that they don't want to do, and that they could be a manager of those agents. And I think that's the opportunity for younger folks, is don't be afraid of it, because it will only take your job if you don't know how to manage it. But if you become the manager of the AI solutions, of the AI tools, and you come to your interview saying, here's my stack, instead of saying, I know Microsoft PowerPoint and I know, Word and I know Excel, but you say, I actually know GitHub, I know how to build on Vercel, I know how to use Claude Code even to build something. I even as basic as I've played around with N8N to automate certain things, and here's my workflow, then I'm like, okay, I can trust this person to be part of our fast-paced, forward-thinking AI-first company. And that's what I would suggest. YouTube, watch
Awesome.
YouTube videos and practice and come with that.
Yeah, I think building on top of that, the things that are important to me moving forward is less technical prowess, more people skills, product sense, and initiative, if that makes sense. Where not everybody that's on my technical team needs to be like a deep dyed in the wool, close to the metal nerd, but they do need to have people skills because ultimately the economy, like it or not, is about people, right? And all of the business you're going to do, at least in the near term, is going to be people convincing people that your thing is good. So the personality becomes more important, and the ability to take initiative and not be told what to do is
Very
also very
cool.
important to
Those
me.
are both really original answers. That's great. Because I usually get, the fundamentals of physics and things like nerdy answers. Um, So, as we move towards the end of the interview, I wanted to ask about, I want to discuss about digital transformation. Um, I look at digital maturity of companies on a scale of like 1 to 5, simplistically. 1 being like they're still using Excel for almost everything and communicating by email, as opposed to we have these fully agentic, adaptive, autonomous digital twins. And I don't think anybody's at 5, on that scale. I think most people are between 1 and 2, but I'm wondering, in your experience, talking to your customers, do you find that they're between 1 and 3, between 1 and 2, or they're some of it 4? I mean, how would you look at that?
So in enterprise, the built paid for stack will be a 2.5 to a 3. The how the sausage actually gets made will be a 1. In the mid market, you're kind of closer to the 2 world, where people are very curious. And I've found this change in consumer trend, at least in the mid market, where people have just suddenly woken up to automating stuff they could have automated 15 years ago because they perceive the friction to be lower, and they perceive anything that's in any way automating anything to be AI. And they're very curious, and they're very ready to actually make a change. Whereas I could get to a yes 5 years ago, but getting them to actually do some change management was the hard part. And that's
Interesting.
gotten better.
Yeah, I would say quite similar. And I would just add an interesting thing I saw recently was a Microsoft report about, and Andreessen Horowitz shared it and kind of republished it about looking at the percentage of agents being used individually in companies. And surprisingly, manufacturing had the highest share of agents being used in individual companies. Now, only 10% of manufacturers were using agents, but those that were using it at a way higher percentage than even regular software companies were using it. Meaning, once you get into an industrial, once you get into a manufacturer and they're open to AI, their usage of it and their implementation of it is quite heavy. And what was even more interesting is when you were looking at the table and you were looking at the numbers, they basically were showing not only the amount of agents being engaged, but also how many prompts were being plugged in. And the prompts that were being plugged in and engaged with in this industrial or in manufacturing space was actually quite low. What we're seeing then is you're having a lot of agents that are not necessarily chat interfaces, but these are actual practical daily workflows that are being used, or tools that are agentic tools that are being used and thought about in the industrial space. And so when I'm thinking about that in answer to your question is I'm really seeing, and it's always this interesting thing because people are talking about, industrials or manufacturing or supply chain being so old school. And then you look at these companies and they are so freaking incredibly brilliant. They're building robots. They're building the most complex industrial products oftentimes. And yet still their back office or their support system or their sales teams are still being bogged down by this, not necessarily as innovative as the actual manufacturing floor is. And I think that's really where the opportunity is. And I see, like, Scott, that's where you're building in. That's where we're building in. And I think that's our goal, is to get them from the reliance on Excel to the understanding that Excel is great, but let's automate some of those processes so you don't always need to just go into that Excel. And I think there's huge opportunity there.
So my premise, also one of the premises on this webcast, is that if companies do wish to move that needle to the right towards fully autonomous digital twins, then using an Omnae or using a Bardin is a much better bet than waiting for SAP, Oracle, DS, Siemens PTC to help them with it. So I'm wondering, like, when you guys have shown people this way, has there been an epiphany of people said, holy cow, I mean, if I broke the barriers between engineering and manufacturing, I could actually go faster and get more profitability and more, higher quality and et cetera. Have you seen that a sort of epiphany or a sort of a realization because they're using your software?
I would say that it is not an epiphany. It is a really pleasant, oh my God, kind of moment of like, I need this, but it's not like a, oh my, wow, my world is changed. Because I think that, oh my, wow, my world is changed is kind of a little BS sometimes. And it's like really nice for a demo. But when you come in and you actually start doing these processes, our goal is more like, wow, now Todd or Joe or Jeff or Rick could retire without being super stressed about it because they know that the juniors that they're bringing onto their team can actually scope that very complex project well, and that their customers will actually be supported without it having to escalate too far and wait for, Japan to wake up because they're the ones that know all the details of that
Mm.
specific AMR. And so I think it's more about like a sigh of relief that I'm looking for rather than a wow epiphany. I just want people to sigh with relief that they've got extra hands and extra capabilities that they never had before.
Similar
How
for
about you,
us.
Scott?
Also, I'd say it's bigger companies are liking us in that they can test us in small scale much easier than they can test a solution from a Siemens or a PTC or an SAP, or they can deploy us into either like a small business unit or into their prototype shop or something like that and solve a lot of problems there, especially in worlds where the big systems just don't like dealing with like pre-part number, pre-release production, things like that. And then they can roll us out more broadly once they've proven it in that faster paced environment.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think one of the things that a lot of enterprises do, but I believe shouldn't do, is they're attempting to roll out AI from the innovation level, top down kind of approach and say, we want the same thing to run across everything, the same system to run across everything. And then when you're looking at the way the market works, and you're looking even in the industrial market, the folks that are building the sensors, in theory, have the smart engineers that they also could be building the pneumatic valves, right? They also could be building the pumps. They also could be building, but their focus has been and will be the sensors or the vision sensors. And I think that's something to keep in mind is that the folks that are trying to, now take one AI solution and assume it's going to work just as well for accounting as it will to go ahead and build your bomb, as it will to go ahead and answer very complex engineering questions, is naive, I think. And I think the ability to go in and say, we're going to solve this use case. We're going to start with a small, very focused use case. We're going to roll it out incrementally across your team, and we're going to be the experts. We are the experts in this specific space, in this very core part of your business, but a element of your business, I think is the right way for folks to do it. And I think that's why I have a feeling we're going to see mid-market companies actually excel in the adoption of AI solutions because they have that ability to kind of take incremental steps and don't need to wait for a top-down mandate to roll out AI across all divisions.
You can also kind of see it from the big tech side too, of the tendency for the big providers to try and just cram an LLM into everything and just force it on people. And then that tends to just create a bunch of pushback and little usage and a lot of cash being burned instead of trying to find like real wedges and wins and roll them out one at a time, which I think would be better for everybody.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, that's been great. I really appreciate the candid answers and the discussion. This has been fantastic. I'm wondering, where can we see you guys this year? Scott, I got to meet you down in Threaded in Miami, which was awesome.
Great.
And then Fay, you said you were about to head to New York. So where could people meet Fay and Scott and the rest, what's left of this year?
Yeah, I'll be next week in New York. I will be following that in Minnesota, following that in Detroit. And the best place, right after that would be to meet me at Automate. I'm going to be at Automate in Chicago for the full week. And I would love for folks to connect with me. I'd love to meet you in person. And I'm on an avid engager on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Fay Goldstein, at LinkedIn and add
Awesome.
me there.
And
Yeah,
maybe a thread in Tel Aviv, right?
Yeah.
And in Tel Aviv, yeah. Sometimes, but I'm here.
Yeah. Sorry,
Absolutely.
Scott.
Oh, no problem. We're still kind of working out our conference schedule for the back half of the year, but like as Fay is, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can get me at scott@omnae.com if you want to just send me an email. I'm happy to talk to just about anybody.
Awesome. Well, I think I forgot to call out our sponsor, AWS. There'll be a link in the comments to download the white paper, or I think there's actually a webcast that they're promoting now about agentic AI and leveraging AWS Marketplace for that. I want to, again, thank Fay and Scott for their time today. It's been really interesting, a lot of fun, a lot of very unique answers to these questions today. I really appreciate that. And I hope to talk to you guys soon. It's been fun.
Likewise, good catching up. Nice to
Yeah,
meet you, Fay.
nice to meet you too.
Okay.
Guys.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.